Hey, Steve, I think we're back. We're back in business. I don't know if anybody's watching or not, but we're back. And I've been recording the whole time. So, folks, if you're just joining us, back, if you
You
make
do
it
that
back,
editing magic that you do so
yeah,
well.
we'll be editing this and put it all together. Something happened there, and Steve and I both got disconnected, and we are 150 miles apart. So something went on there with either YouTube or one of our systems going on here. So to wrap up the 4A, what I was talking about was Carmel. They're my enigma team. That who knows, they very well could make a run just because they've beaten some teams that were much higher ranked and lost to some teams that were much lower ranked. So they're my enigma, so to speak. So let's move on here, Steve. And what I want to do real quick is I want to go through our conference champions for the year, and then we're going to wrap up by giving some player highlights. So let's go to our conference champions for the year, and we're just going to kind of run through these real quick. Here are our conference championships. Let's start out with Allen County. That was the Heritage Patriots. What a great year they had. Then we go to the Blue Chip Conference, a great conference there for sure. And South Knox takes home the Blue Chip Conference title. The Central Indiana Conference was a tie between Oak Hill and Eastbrook. Both had a conference record of 8-1 this year. Congratulations to them. Then we have the Circle City Conference. That was taken by the Brebeuf Jesuit Braves of Indianapolis and Andrew Dukanich, their star pitcher. So congratulations to Brebeuf for taking home the Circle City title. Then we go to Conference Indiana. Columbus North Bulldogs take home the title. And we go back up north to the Duneland Conference. I love this conference, all part of Northwest Indiana. Lake Central Indians take home the Duneland Conference Championship. Then we go to Eastern Indiana Conference. Batesville Bulldogs, and they got one of the best hats. I love it right there. Batesville Bulldogs are the Eastern Indiana Conference champion. The Great Lakes Conference, Steve, I think you were at one of these games. Hammond Central Wolves, the new team, they were merged from Hammond Gavitt and Hammond Morton. Is that right?
No, they play. No,
It was Gavitt and
Hammond.
Clark. Gavitt and
Well,
Clark. They merged.
they played. The game I went to. They played Morton, and they play the Central plays its games at Gavitt until they get their own field
Yep.
on campus.
Well, and you notice I got a logo there and not a hat. Hammond Central. I know it's your first year, so I'll let it slide. But we need to get that taken care of. We need to get a hat guy, a Hammond Central Wolves lid. We'll make it happen. Staying up in northern Indiana, the Greater South Shore Conference. Hanover Central wins it again. Of course, they were in the Vic last year, and they had some big wins to wrap up the season, including giving Andrean one of the, I think it was Andrean, wasn't it, Steve, that one of their only two losses on the year? So Hanover Central with another big win. The Hoosier Conference, here is the first of many conferences in Indiana that coincidentally start with the word Hoosier. Lafayette Central Catholic and Western both had an 8-1 record there in that conference. Of course, Lafayette Central Catholic beat Western there towards the end of the season, but you're talking about two stellar teams right there in the Hoosier Conference. Now let's go to the Hoosier Crossroads Conference, the HCC, arguably, and it's an easy argument to make, one of the toughest conferences in the state. They've had three teams this year share the 1A or the number one ranking in 4A at different points in the season, but as the Fishers Tigers, who take down Brownsburg, who finished second. There's another 4A team out of that conference you got to keep an eye on, because going into that last week of the season, Brownsburg split with Fishers. And if Brownsburg would have won that first game, you could have had a two-way tie or possibly even a Brownsburg champion in the Hoosier Crossroads Conference. So that game went all the way, that conference went all the way down the wire like we knew it would. Of course, there's this one, Hoosier Heartland Conference. Carroll Cougars, it's the Carroll of Florida variety. Awesome looking lid. Great season they're having. Hoosier Heartland Conference champions. The Mount Vernon Marauders. We're talking about Mount Vernon of Fortville. Coach King also got his 300th win this year, and they win the Hoosier Heritage Conference. Look at that lid. Moving on to the Hoosier Hills Conference, the New Albany Bulldogs take that title once again in that very strong conference in southern Indiana. Hoosier North Conference, we got to give it to the Winnemac Warriors. Another good-looking year. They're set to make a run in the tourney as well. Winnemac Warriors take home the Hoosier North Conference. Then you got the Hoosier Plains Conference. I like this conference here. A lot of mix of teams of different sizes. Bethany Christian Bruins take home the Hoosier Plains Conference title. Now we got the Indiana Crossroads, and you've got the Cascade Cadets. I mentioned them earlier. Look at that baby blue lid right there. Isn't that just gorgeous? Indiana Crossroads title right there, and they're set to make a run as well. Now we got the MIC. Too many letters to spell it out. The Metropolitan Interscholastic Conference. We know it all over the state as the MIC. Congratulations to the Lawrence North Wildcats with that green and red lid. Speaking of lids, look at this one right here. Conference champions in the Mid-Eastern Conference. The Wapahani Raiders sporting that old WWE W right there. I love that lid. Congratulations to them. They're also set to make a run. We've been talking about them all year. Mid-Eastern Conference champions. Then you got the Mid-Hoosier Conference champions, the Hauser Jets. They've got a pitcher that's got 2 no-hitters this year. They're a team to watch. They can make a run. You got an arm or two, that's all you need to make a run. And Hauser did it in the conference this year, taking home the Mid-Hoosier Conference title. Going back to Southern Indiana in the Mid-Southern Conference, a team that is also definitely set to make a run in the playoffs. Silver Creek Dragons take home the Mid-Southern Conference title. To the Mid-State Conference. This is a fun conference right here. Mooresville Pioneers with that 20-plus win season ended at ranked number 2 in the state in the IHSBCA. They're set to make a run at Mooresville and the Mid-State Conference champions. Midwest Conference champions. You think Tri County's coach is a White Sox fan? Look at that lid right there. This is one of only a few lids that I asked the coach to buy a second one and one to keep in my personal collection because I love that lid. But all kidding aside, Tri-County Cavaliers have put together a good season and Midwest Conference title. Richmond's another team we didn't really talk about too much, but they put together a good season there in the North Central Conference. They call it the North Central Conference, but it spans the east side of the state to the west side of the state. This is a conference enigma for sure. But Richmond Red Devils took home the conference title right there in the North Central Conference. Look at this right here in the Northeast 8. We've talked about this conference a few times. 3-way tie. All 3 teams 5-2 in the conference. You've got DeKalb, Norwell, and Belmont sharing the Northeast 8 conference title. And then we go to the NECC. I love this conference as well. Another tie between 2 great teams, Westview and Garrett, really turned it around this year. Both those teams are turnaround teams of the year right there with Westview and Garrett, both at 10-1 in a very big conference and a very competitive conference this year. You had these 2 at 10-1. You also had 2 underneath it at 9-2. So very competitive up there in the corner this year. Northern Indiana Conference, Penn was back at it, taking home that title in another very competitive conference there, right due north in Steve's backyard, Northern Indiana Conference. The Penn Kingsmen take home that title once again. Northern Lakes Conference, Northridge and Goshen tied. We're going to mention Goshen later because this is the first part of the conference championship they've won in 24 years. So congratulations to Goshen and Northridge at 10-4 tie for the Northern Lakes Conference Championship. And look at this one right here. All the Crossroads conferences are awesome. Indiana Crossroads, Hoosier Crossroads, and this one, Northwest Crossroads. You have Andrean and Munster both at 9-1. What's that? What's that, Steve? Oh, I thought you said
you
something.
had frozen there for a second again.
Oh, did I? Okay. Well, I'm back at it now. We'll have to check the internet connection here. But Munster gave Andrean one of their only losses this year, but a great matchup right there. Andrean 3A, number 1, and they're going to make a run. Munster, a 20-plus win team, they're going to make a run. You've got all those teams up there in the north. You got Munster, Lake Central, LaPorte. They're all going to make a run this year in that 4A. Very competitive, good matchup there. Ohio River Valley, as we go down south, the Southwestern Rebels, that's southwestern of Hanover, not of Shelbyville. Southwestern Rebels take home the Ohio River Valley Conference Championship. Patoka Lake, another conference I love. Coach for Mitchell's a good follow on Facebook, by the way. Puts a lot of inspirational quotes on Facebook every day. Just a great follow. Patoka Lake champions are the Mitchell Blue Jackets. The Pioneer Conference, we talked about this team. University Trailblazers take home the Pioneer Conference title this year. Let's go back down south to the pocket. I always mention that we cover baseball from the pocket to the corner. This is what I'm talking about. Southwest Indiana. You have Forest Park Rangers. What about that name? Love that lid too. Take home the pocket championship. Just a great conference right there. Porter County back up at the opposite side of the state, back up in Northwest Indiana, and we've got a tournament winner and a regular season winner. You have Boone Grove took the season title, and South Central took home the tourney title right there in a very competitive conference in Northwest Indiana. Both of these teams are set to make a run, but they got to face each other. The best name for a conference in Indiana, the Sagamore. A lot of the conference surrounds Montgomery County there, and just about 45 degrees northwest of Indiana, northwest of Indianapolis there. You take 74, you got Crawfordsville, North Montgomery, Southmont. All those teams right around there, Tri-West. Great conference, competitive every single year. Crawfordsville's been ranked in the top 5 almost all year, and they are set to make a run, and they took home a very competitive conference in the Sagamore. Let's go to the Southern Conference, and you had the Borden Braves in 1979. For one day, they were called the Borden Berries. I actually have that hat. The Southern Conference champions, Borden Braves right there. Southern Indiana Conference. Wow, how competitive was this? You got some teams down there. We very well could see a Southern Indiana Conference team in Victory Field this year, but Castle Knights are the ones who take it home in that very competitive Southern Knights. Glad to see this. The Duggar Union Bulldogs in the Southern Roads. They'll be back in the IHSAA next year, and they're conference champions this year in that Southern Roads Conference. Southwestern Indiana Conference. This is one of those. Southwestern Indiana Conference as well as the Western Indiana Conference. They know each other very well in that West Central and Southwest Central kind of basically Terre Haute. And if you go south 45 degrees, you've got the Western Indiana Conference and the Southwestern Indiana Conference. Very competitive. They play each other every year, and probably they cross play each other between the two conferences every year. And I can't say enough about, Linton Stockton Miners. I think they were 500, but in that conference you've got Shakamak amongst so many others, and even tells you how competitive it is. They have a 500 schedule, but they took home the Southwestern Indiana Conference. Like I said, them and the Western Indiana Conference are probably one of the best 2A, 3A mixed conferences in the state. So a big conference win there that tells you that Linton Stockton has some momentum coming into the tournament. Let's go to the Summit Conference up there in Fort Wayne. You had Fort Wayne Snyder and Fort Wayne Bishop Dwinger tying at 12-2. Another conference, and like I said, there's a lot of Fort Wayne teams in the rankings this year. Every part of the state is represented, and I love to see some good competition coming out of Fort Wayne because it's one of the hotbeds of baseball in our state for sure. Three Rivers Conference, the Wabash Apaches win it, and they won it 9 wins to no losses in the Three Rivers Conference. That's the first time that's happened since 2015 that any team in that conference has ran the gamut undefeated in conference play. The Wabash Apaches finished it off by beating a very good Rochester team, so keep an eye on them come tournament time, and they won the Three Rivers Conference. Tri-Eastern, gotta love the old English font. Love that Hagerstown lid right there. Tri-Eastern continuing their highly competitive route. This team just keeps getting better and better every year. They're in that 2A, 3A range, and another successful winning that Tri-Eastern Conference. Wabash River Conference, we talked about this one a lot. This has got Riverton Park and Seeger and Park Heritage, South Vermilion, North Vermilion, Attica, Covington. Very competitive conference, primarily 1 and 2A teams. Seeger is a 2A, and I think South Vermilion is a 3A. The rest of them are 1A, and Riverton Park is a team to watch. I already talked about that earlier before our episode crashed. But Riverton Park, definitely a team to watch. Charlie Martin there's got them going strong. Staying on the same side of the state, The Western Indiana Conference. This is that conference along with the Southwest Indiana Conference that I love so much. This Western Indiana Conference includes West Vigo, Northview, Edgewood, and just that by itself, you're talking a team that's won the state finals and a team that's been in the state finals in the last 4 years. I think Northview won it in 17, and Edgewood was there in 19. So highly competitive conference. You also have, I think, Sullivan. That whole area right there between that and Southwestern Indiana Conference is so competitive. So there's our conference titles. Folks, congratulations to all of our teams this year that took home a conference title. Let's talk about some individual records that I saw as we're looking through the recap the season here. There were some players on teams that broke team records. Let's take a look at them. Let's start out going up in that Northeast Corner Conference. Nick Miller of Fremont. School record in home runs and RBIs, 11 home runs and 57 RBI, and that was the coach called it the top power hitter in school history right there with 2 school records. So great season by Nick Miller. I think Fremont was one of those teams that ended up around 9-2 or 8-3 in that highly competitive NECC conference this year. Of course, we mentioned this guy a few times, Andrew Dukanich, one of the top pitchers in the state, if not the country. He's a Vanderbilt commit. School record 256 strikeouts this year. Congratulations to him. I like to see that. He's a highly touted kid. Anybody that follows baseball knows this name, and he didn't let go. I mean, he didn't let down. He played the high school season because it means something. High school baseball matters. Let's go up to Fishers, and I saw one of these right here. Dom Oliverio. He tied the school records for home runs in a season with 7 there at Fishers. And this was I saw one of these home runs because they were losing to Brownsburg last week in just a phenomenal game. And the pitcher for Brownsburg, Tibbs, man, he was just dealing against a great Fishers team.
A 3-run shot.
Well, before him, there was I can't think of the name of the other kid that hit a 3-run homer followed by a 2-run or a grand slam. I can't remember which, but the 5th inning, they just went off. They had a 3-run home run, that's what it was, and a 2-run home run in the 5th inning. That was the only runs of the game. But other than that, that was a highly competitive game. So congratulations to Dom Oliverio, tying a home run record in one of the toughest conferences in the state. So that says a lot right there. Moving on, let's go to Carroll of Florida. We talked about them. Their 22-0 record is the most wins in school history. We mentioned that, so congratulations to Carroll of Florida. They're set to make a run. We talked about this earlier too. Goshen, the Northern Lakes Conference, first title in 24 years. I love seeing stuff like this. Congratulations to Goshen. They are set for the tournament now with a little bit of confidence behind them after taking home that Northern Lakes Conference title outright. Well done, Goshen. Oak Hill, we mentioned them earlier too. This is the first team that has had back-to-back 20-plus win seasons. So they've got it going on there. They got a new field, new outlook. Oak Hill, team to watch. Silver Creek, the Dragons, we mentioned them earlier. Look at this stat. The Mid-Southern Conference, they have won 55 straight wins in the Mid-Southern Conference. That's 11 out of 12 titles going back to 2015 on the wins. Now, the titles goes farther back, obviously, but the 55 straight conference wins going back to 2015. That is nuts. Congratulations, Silver Creek. Wabash, the Apaches, we mentioned this earlier. The first conference team to run the gamut and go undefeated in conference play since 2015. Way to go, Wabash. They are set. Like I said, they finished their season with a big win over Rochester. So they are in the right direction headed into the tournament. Got to give a shout out to Brad King right here with his 300th win for Mount Vernon, the Fortville variety. That picture you see there, I'm cut out of it. That's the picture where I got the Mount Vernon hat from Coach King, and we're actually standing in like a Walmart parking lot. So I had to cut that out of the background. It's the only picture I could find of him. But 300th win for Coach King there at Mount Vernon. Congratulations. That happened last week. And then also last week, and Steve, you interviewed this guy. Got to give a shout out to Brian Dudley. What'd you say? 39 years he's been coaching?
His 39th season, he got to 800 wins.
39th season, 800 wins. One of, I think, four that have over 800, maybe five, right around there. It's a handful, whatever it is. Let's talk about the top performances from last week. And then we've got, like I mentioned earlier, we've got something special we're going to talk about. But let's talk about the top performances of the week. First of all, from Indianapolis, Washington, I talked to Coach Carlisle about, he sent me this real quick. I had to mention this. Frank Amador Vela. Hope I'm pronouncing that right, Frank. I appreciate it. But Coach, the quote from Coach Carlisle is, "This guy is so," insert like 6-letter O's right there. He's so good. He, you put some kids around this guy, and there's nobody he can't play for. Just couldn't say enough good things about. This is my under the radar player right here. This Indianapolis, Washington, team doesn't get a lot of recognition or exposure, but the team came back. They went 8 years there without having a team. Coach Carlisle brought them back a couple years ago, and he's really moving the team in the right direction. I love seeing this. 10 strikeouts in 7 innings, plus he went 6 for 9 with 8 ribbies and a home run. Big game right there for Big Frank. Moving along, we've got Ben Kearns, the West Vigo Viking. We talked about this earlier. He had 14 strikeouts in that no-hitter versus 1A number 9 Riverton Park. Big game for him right there from West Vigo. Kevin Reed from Martinsville had a 13 strikeout no-hitter, plus went 2 for 2 with 2 home runs last week. I'd call that a pretty good week. They were all versus Perry Meridian. On Tuesday is when he had the, I believe is the game that he had the 13 strikeout no-hitter. Then I think it was Thursday where it was 2 for 2 or 4 for 4. Yeah, it was 4 for 4, actually. I got that stat wrong. He went 4 for 4 with 2 doubles and 2 big flies. What a week for Kevin Reed there in Martinsville. Floyd Central's Noah Wathan, or I hope I'm pronouncing that right, 10 strikeout no-hitter versus Bloomington North. That is the team's actually third no-hitter. Dylan Hogan's got the other 2. Dylan Hogan, one of 2 people in the state with 2 no-hitters. But Noah Wathan from Floyd Central, 10K no-hitter. Third for the team. That's the equation, folks. We talked about it. 2 strong arms. You're set to make a run in the tournament. So keep an eye on Floyd Central. Matter of fact, they were my dark horse to win it all last year in that 4A bracket. Came up a little short. Logan Gibbs from Cascade, we mentioned them earlier too. Look at this week. 6 for 9, 7 ribbies, 2 doubles, and 2 big flies. That's the second person that had that this week. Matter of fact, he had a game earlier in the year where he had 3 home runs. I think he's got 11 on the year. Logan Gibbs from Cascade can just rake. So if you're around Cascade in that sectional, make sure you check them out. This is a kid to watch. Wapahani, we mentioned them. Gavin Lush. Matter of fact, Steve mentioned them. I think, Steve, you were at this game. Only 5 strikeouts and 5 innings pitched, but it was a perfect game versus 2A number 6 Monroe Central. That's saying a lot right there. Going to Shenandoah, Dylan McDaniel. I tell you what, Shenandoah, we could talk about them for a while here, but they had a 13K 5-inning pitched versus Blue River Valley, 13 Ks in 5 innings. And then in the same week last week, he had a grand slam in the 8th versus Daleville. And that game versus Daleville was tied, went into extra innings, and then in the 8th inning, Shenandoah just went off for 8 runs, including a 3-run home run by Jake Robinson, and then you had Dylan's grand slam. So 1-1 tie going into the 8th. Shenandoah wakes up and just goes off against Daleville. What a game that was right there. Let's talk about Cade Stanifer right here. He only had 7 Ks and 2.2 innings pitched versus Avon, but we got to mention it because some of the teams like Westfield and Zionsville, these big 4A powerhouse teams from the Hoosier Crossroads Conference, they really patrol their pitching. It's not often that you'll get a pitcher going all 7 innings. They platoons the word I was looking for. Sorry. So this, 7 Ks and 2 2 2/3 innings pitched versus Avon is a big deal. Because he almost struck out. Every out that for those 2 innings was a strikeout. And Cade Stanifer, like I said, he's hitting mid-90s. So this is a kid to watch. And why Westfield, even though they dropped in the rankings, is a team that can absolutely make a run in the playoffs, if not all the way to the Vic. Let's go on and let's talk about Tri-West. This is just a cool performance right here. And we're talking about Damon Cat. And I don't know if he's the brother or not. There's another Cat that's a freshman on Tri-West, their third baseman. They've got two Cat kids. That's a bad way of saying it for Tri-West there that just have been doing well. And Tri-West, they've turned it around. They're in that Sagamore conference I talked about that is so competitive, and in the last few weeks they have really improved a lot. So they're another team to keep an eye on. But Damon Cat here versus North Montgomery, he had a straight home steal. Now we're not talking about a pass ball. He just straight steal to tie the game at 6-6. But he wasn't done because then he had the walk-off home run to win it his next at bat. What a game right there. Now, before we talk about our BAI Player of the Week, we have something to introduce here, and we're going to talk about this kind of just briefly, but we know we've got some live viewers back with us here, so help us spread the word because this is going to be cool. Introducing our first ever, we're calling it the BAI 9. What is it? It's the Baseball Across Indiana. This is the Elite 9, the top 9. This is our top 9 players in the state of Indiana, and we're going to announce it after the state finals. And this doesn't matter what grade you're in, doesn't matter if they're all catchers or all center fielders. This is the top 9 players in the state of Indiana, and we are recognizing them with something cool right here. They're already being made. This is the behind-the-scenes view of the BAI 9 custom wood bat made by Gandalf Bats in Whiteland, Indiana. Of course, Tom Gandalf's the guy that makes these. He's been, if you follow him on Twitter, just look up Gandalf Bats, and he's making these bats handcrafted in his wood shop. He started just about a year and a half ago, and man, these things are on fire, and they're great custom-made bats. He's the son of Coach Gandalf, who is now at Cecina, Hall of Fame coach, spent most of his years at Center Grove, which is where Tom graduated. But the BAI 9 are 9 top players in the state of Indiana. Each will get one of these with their name engraved on it as well. If you zoom into that picture right there, it says 2022 BAI 9. Coaches, make sure you hit us up. We want to make sure everybody is reviewed that should be to get one of this honor of being part of the inaugural BAI 9. Everybody who got our Player of the Week is already nominated and will be in the running for a BAI 9 award. Speaking of that, we were talking about our top performers. That leaves us with, as we get close to wrapping things up here, our Baseball Across Indiana Player of the Week. Now, you saw some great stats in those pages earlier there, but we had one player that, considering a lot of variables, stood out above the rest. And we want to congratulate Alec Hirschberger of Fairfield. He only lasted 6 2/3 of an inning, but he absolutely shut down Westview for 6 2/3 innings with 16 strikeouts. I was talking to Coach Ron of Westview after this game, and we're going to talk more about this here in a minute as we get close to wrapping things up. But Coach Ron said that, Coach Ron said R-A-H-A, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Coach. I've talked to you a few times and never asked. But he said, for that first 6.5 innings there, Alec Hirschberger just did what Alec Hirschberger does. All of us up here in the northeast corner, we know how good Alec Hirschberger is. And for the state, we've talked about him a few times. You got to look at this kid. He is uncommitted, and not only is he his strikeout ratio, strikeouts per innings pitched is over 2. He also has over a 4.0 GPA. So just an all-around great kid for sure. So congratulations to Alec Hirschberger for being our Baseball Across Indiana Player of the Week for the last week of the regular season as we head into tournament time. And that brings us to our final out for today. And our final out, we had some things. This week was a tough week for a few different schools, a few different communities. Of course, a lot of you have read about what happened in Washington High School down in southwest Indiana. There was a car wreck. A few student athletes have passed. Teams like South Knox and others in that area have really surrounded Washington High School to support them. And then Alec Hirschberger, I mentioned him as our Baseball Across Indiana Player of the Week. He is a Fairfield graduate, and this week Fairfield had a really tough situation they had to face. They're in the running for the conference championship, Northeast Corner Conference, and then they had a player pass away, and Coach Kaufman and Coach Ron, Coach Kaufman of Fairfield and Coach Ron got a hold of each other and talked, and the game ended up being moved to Westview, bigger field. They had lights. Westview not only accommodated them for that, they also accommodated them by passing over a big portion, if not all, I can't remember the exact percentage, of the ticket money was given to Fairfield for support of the family that lost the player. So Westview, I could talk about this for a long time. I've mentioned, from the very first episode that I'm a fan of baseball, but I'm also a bigger fan of baseball coaches because of what they mean to the student athletes. And this week I saw two coaches really put on a different hat. And that's something I've also talked about a lot, is the hats that we wear. The hats that we wear as adults. And I'm not talking about this hat or these hats you see behind me. I'm talking about the roles that we have as individuals. And if you're a coach, not just a baseball coach, but any coach, you're a leader of those young men and women. And I saw Coach Ron and Coach Kaufman this week step up, not just as baseball coaches, but as leaders of young men to be there for their community. And what ended up happening is all the communities rallied together for this. Westview, that game at Westview between Fairfield and Westview was the most attended high school baseball season game in the regular season that I have ever seen. And these are 1A teams in the middle of, rural northeast Indiana. This is not Fishers versus Carmel. This is Fairfield versus Westview, and there were, I couldn't count because it surrounded the whole field as the community reached out for Fairfield. And, Alec Hirschberger having to pitch that game with everything else that's much more important going on around. I got to tip my cap to him. I got to tip my cap to Coach Ron for how he stepped up in Westview, being there for Coach Kaufman. I talked to Coach Ron after the game, and he couldn't. You could feel the sorrow in him on how much he felt for Coach Kaufman, and he just wanted to be there for Coach Kaufman because it is a brotherhood. I mentioned on a episode, during 2020, I asked the question to people all over the state. I said, is baseball important? Does baseball matter? And at the end of the day, obviously the answer to that is no. But it's because of people like Coach Ron of Westview, Coach Kaufman at Fairfield, people who step up and be not just a coach, but they be what they need to be for these young men and coaches around the state. So I'm tipping my cap for our final out. And for you coaches, coaches that from teams that we didn't mention in this, playoff analysis, teams that we maybe didn't mention all year, teams that maybe had one win. I salute my hat. I tip my cap to all those coaches because at the end of the day, what you're doing when you put that uniform on as a leader means so much more than the record that your team has. Folks, that wraps up our week in baseball across Indiana. God bless, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.